Good afternoon, everybody. The incident that happened in Minnesota that we have all viewed on national TV was wrong. I don't think that there's a person in the United States or a police officer in the United States that doesn't feel like these actions were wrong. Since I have been mayor in the city of Omaha, public safety has been my #1 priority, and police and community relations have been a big priority. I am very proud of Chief Schmatter and his command staff and all the work that they have done to help improve our community relations, and I think they've done an excellent job. But when an incident like happened in Minnesota happens, it can fracture police-community relationships all over the country, and this is what we are seeing. There was protest and violent protest all over the country last night, and Omaha was one of them at 72nd and Dodge. You know, almost every police officer in Omaha gets up every day, puts his uniform on, and goes out, puts his life on the line to protect and serve the citizens of Omaha. That's what they do day after day after day. And some of them lose their life in their jobs. Jimmy Wilson, Jason Pratt, Carrie Orozco, those are just examples of Omaha police officers who are truly out there to protect and to serve and to protect our community. But right now, we all have an issue that we have to deal with. Again, what happened in Minnesota was wrong, and we believe it was wrong. But now what we have to do here in Omaha is to show the community that we are still here to protect and serve, and to listen to what our constituents and what our citizens are saying, and to continue with the great work that we have achieved in the city of Omaha over the last 8 years, the difference that we have had with a great community relations here. Another thing that we have done in the city of Omaha is we have created a CCRB, Citizen Complaint Review Board. As I said before, I have great trust in Chief Schmatter and his command staff. Chief Schmatter takes every incident of excessive force with any police officer. He takes it with seriousness, he investigates, he disciplines, and he is terminated. And I trust that he does that. But the CCRB that we created is a citizen board that goes about one step beyond that. And so we allow citizens that feel like perhaps that if they didn't agree with any decision that was made, they still have another channel so that they can investigate with a group of citizens a complaint about an officer in the city of Omaha. So we have worked very, very hard. We've worked very, very hard to win the trust of the community. I think the community does trust the Omaha Police Department. But again, when incidents like this happens, we have a job to do, and we will do it very, very well. I'm going to ask Chief Schmatter to come forward right now and to speak and go through the events that happened yesterday. But again, I really, really want to stress, we value our constitutional rights. We value the right to assemble, peacefully assemble. But what happened last night, as it turned violent, violence does not honor George Floyd. And anger and frustration are not solved with violent actions. And last night, for a while, it was a peaceful demonstration and protest, and then it did turn violent. And when people turn violent and they deliberately destruct property, that's when the police have to move forward and they have to act. So with that, I will be happy to take questions later, but Chief Schmatter is going to come forward right now, and he is going to go through the events last night, and then we will all be available to answer your questions afterwards. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to give a briefing on the rally protest activities from last night, 72nd and Dodge Street. But before I do, I have some preamble comments I'd like to make. Look, I am not deterred or disappointed in Omaha on any level. All the positive comments that I've consistently made about our great community continue today. Omaha has made great strides towards police-community relations, crime reduction, and community partnerships. And I like our momentum moving forward as we strive to get even better. I understand that seeing a police officer in uniform right now evokes a lot of emotions for many. The way we will respond in Omaha is to provide impartial, ethical, and professional policing services in partnership with our community. It also means that we will see other points of view, and we will strive to maintain and improve the trust and confidence of our community that has been so supportive of us. I want to thank a few of our partners from last night because their involvement and their cooperation with the Omaha Police Department was tremendously important to a safe resolution of last night's events. First of all, the Nebraska State Patrol, I want to thank Colonel Boldock and all his people. Douglas County Sheriff's Office, I want to thank Sheriff Dunning and all the deputies. Sarpy County Sheriff's Office, I want to thank Sheriff Davis and all his deputies. I want to thank the La Vista Police Department, Chief Loston. I want to thank our Omaha Public Works Department, MAP Bus Service in the City of Omaha, Omaha Fire Department, Nebraska Furniture Mart for allowing the use of their lots. Also want to thank the governor for his support, and I appreciate the phone call that he and I had this morning and all that level of support that's coming from the state. But most of all, I want to acknowledge the men and women of the Omaha Police Department, the Nebraska State Troopers, and all the sheriff's deputies who adapted professionally last night under extreme conditions. Mayor Stothert and I were in constant communication all last night. I was at the scene, I was at the command post. I asked the mayor not to come down because at some point this became just a pure law enforcement operation and the conditions weren't safe. But we were in constant contact from start to 2 o'clock in the morning, if not longer. Let me give you a chronological rundown of some of the events that took place last night. At 5:30 p.m. we established a command post and officers were on scene with the purpose of facilitating a peaceful demonstration, a peaceful rally, a peaceful expression of thoughts. That was our mission. We wanted to ensure everybody had their First Amendment right. We wanted that to take place. At 6:30 p.m., there was an estimated 600 people in all four corners of 72nd and Dodge Street. At 7:25 p.m., 60 to 70 people entered the street and blocked westbound traffic. At 7:36 p.m., rocks began to be thrown at officers, bottles were thrown, and a Nebraska State Patrol cruiser was surrounded and had people on top of it. This is when law enforcement attempted to start to restore order. At 8:03 p.m., a citywide call for assistance, citywide helping officer, was put out as additional resources were needed. Omaha police cruisers were also surrounded at this time. At 8:20 p.m., our rapid deployment force, I hear the term riot police, we call it rapid deployment force. They were staged in the area, and for the next 6 hours they were deployed and assisted in attempting to disperse the crowd, as safety had completely been compromised at this point. At the height of the crowds, it was estimated that there was over 1,000 people. One other highlight, about 22:01, which is 10:01 p.m., Target store was contacted by the crowd and was attempted to be breached. Officers and State Patrol personnel secured that area and some of the other areas to prevent property damage accident. Pepper ball and tear gas munitions were deployed. And we finally got control of the incident about 2 o'clock in the morning. So from last night, there were 21 arrests made for various charges, ranging from disorderly conduct to firearms possession to failure to disperse, destruction of property, carrying a illegal firearm, etc. Out of those 21 individuals booked, 16 were white, 3 were black, 2 were Hispanic. The Omaha Police Department did a canvass of businesses in the aftermath, and we noted 12 businesses of damage. Factory Sunlight Outlet had about $1,200 worth of damage to glass panel windows. Hobby Lobby had about $2,000 worth of damage to their pane windows. Sears had large windows broken out to their auto center area. They also had some graffiti on some of their windows, $4,000 to $5,000 worth of damage. Verizon store had a broken door, some broken windows. We estimate $2,000. Hobby Lobby had broken windows, estimated at $2,000. Best Buy had 3 broken windows, estimated at about $1,500. Smitty's Garage, 7610 Dodge Street, had broken glass door, broken windows. We estimate about $1,500. Buc-ee's, 76 in Dodge, had windows broken, 3 of them, and they also had some property stolen, or inventory stolen from inside the store. Estimated $1,500 of damage. Petco, there's 1 window broken for about $1,000. Quick Shop had some items stolen, 75th and Cass. And then Target had their main windows broken, estimated $3,000 damage. And Caw Valley Greenhouse had some damage to the pot and plant inventory. We don't have a price tag on that. So that's just a rundown of the property damage estimate from last night. There were 12 police cruisers damaged. One of them had the words ISIS carved in the rear of the cruiser. Most importantly, and I do think indicative of things could have been worse, but things turned out to be okay. We had 1 civilian injury reported of a minor nature. That's reported and documented. There could have been more. And then we had 2 injured officers that were documented, treated, and released. So when safety is compromised and lawlessness starts, that is going to be separate and distinct from the original matter that brought everybody together. And the Omaha Police Department, we have to react to that. Our mission is to do it professionally, legally, and appropriately. There's a professional way to police in all circumstances. There's a professional way to take time out of your lunch when a young child comes up and interferes and interrupts your lunch, even during a long day. There's a professional way to leave that kid feeling good. There's a professional way to make an arrest. There's a professional way under those extreme circumstances which law enforcement has to use force or tow a car or the ultimate level of deadly force. There's a professional way to handle all of that. And from my viewpoint of the scene, I thought the Omaha Police Department and our cooperating agencies handled the events that were presented to us in the most professional manner as we possibly could. The mayor and I are available for comments, so I'll stand at the podium first if you have some for me, but the mayor is also available.
Chief, if you had to do...
I'm going to go to Chris Baker first.
Chief, of the people that were arrested, do you know how many of them are from the Omaha area and how many of them are from out of town?
I don't right here, right now, Chris, but I'll be happy to provide that. Their address would be associated with that arrest data, so we can get that out to everybody here.
Tonight, there's a possibility of more protests. Are you guys? Do you have a message about that for tonight?
I do. In my opinion as chief, and I've been doing this for almost 8 years, Omaha is a just fabulous community, and I still maintain that, and I always will. We are working through some tough times in this country, and Omaha is no different than anybody else, so it's understandable. It's understandable, the anger. We're going to be prepared. We want everybody to have a peaceful protest, peaceful rally, peaceful expression of ideas, and we're going to be there to try to facilitate that as much as possible without stifling any rights. Your First Amendment right of freedom of speech is something we encourage, even if it's directed at us. We understand what's going on. We see that side of you, of the anger and the tension across the country. But we will be there to facilitate that, and we will be there to professionally intervene if we need to, if safety begins to be compromised, and it becomes an unsafe situation and a lawless situation. And that's what we're tasked to do as law enforcement, as difficult and complex and with competing interest, if you will. We're going to do it as professional as we can.
Chief, if you had to do last night over again, would you make any changes? And secondly, if there are any incidents tonight, are there any tactical changes you could discuss?
Thanks, Joe. Well, you know me for a while, right? You know I'm not going to tell you anything about our tactics. And, of course, there are things we could improve upon, and we will. Just not going to tell you, okay? We want a peaceful rally. So all the changes we make are designed to facilitate that and further that. So if there's things that we can do in advance, before, early on, in the early stages of it, we'll try to do that to make it as safe as possible.
The Omaha Police also had the sheriff's department there as well as highway patrol and state patrol.
We did.
Were you in charge of all three entities, or were they individually coordinated? How did that all work out?
The incident commander for the event was Captain Lori Scott. She is right here. She was incident commander for all the operations that took place. And that includes the other law enforcement agencies that come to assist, just as if Omaha was going to another jurisdiction to assist. We do operate under their plan. So they operated and assimilated under our direction, and I will say performed amazingly well. Very, very appreciative. Extra shout out to the Nebraska State Patrol. And without their help, things could have been worse. Chris.
There was an armed party in the Target parking lot that was arrested. Can you tell us more about them? Were they a threat to you guys?
I'm not sure. Give me a little more on that incident. Is that with the person with the shotgun?
Yes.
From the information that I had, and I watched that on live feed from the command post, is that individual was making threatening gestures and threatening behavior with that shotgun. And at that point in time, we felt that was a danger to the crowd and anybody who was there, and that's why that arrest was made.
Chief, I'm sitting here with KMTV. My question for you is, why was the road shut down at some point? I believe it was around 7:30-ish.
Mhm.
If you could kind of just tell me why the road was shut down, because a lot of people on social media are saying that's when the tear gas and everything started being thrown out. Can you kind of explain that for me?
Well, that's just not accurate. Okay, the reason the roads shut down is when things start to become out of control and the lawlessness starts and safety is compromised. We don't want anybody else coming and getting hurt. Okay, there could be people on their way thinking they're coming to a peaceful protest. We can't have that. So if we can contain and keep people away, it's a much safer environment. It really boils down to that simple answer. Chris.
Chief, is the overall strategy if lawlessness breaks out to stop it or just contain it?
It depends on the circumstances. Ideally, you'd like to have it cease. There are times when you deal with large crowds that you attempt to contain it because you can't address everything all the time right at that moment because it may distract you from your overall mission, which is to maintain a peaceful atmosphere. Ideally, we would like to cease it. We attempt to contain it if that's what is available to us at time. And everything's a progression. We have to progress in an appropriate manner and not overreact or underreact. So contain initially is often what we will try to do, or cease it initially if we think that will solve the problem. But it's a balancing act, and it's going to ebb and flow from every different circumstance that you will see all across this country. That's how law enforcement will take a peek at it, try to look at it. And when I got home, I couldn't sleep, so I did watch. I noticed a lot of cities were having problems throughout this entire country. And you're seeing law enforcement attempt to adapt to it, and adapt to it in a way in which we understand what's going on, and in a very unique time, law enforcement sides with the premise behind the protest. Okay, we do not feel in any circumstances what occurred in Minneapolis was appropriate. I don't feel that officer is a police officer at all. And that's our stance on that. Next question, please.
Chief, I know that you coordinated with the organizers prior to the protest. Have you talked to them since then, and what's been their response to all of this, their reaction?
Well, it's been a mixed bag. Let's put it that way. We did talk to them before, and we have talked to them during, not so much after. And you know, I'm not going to say too much about the protests and the organization of it, because there has been some social media posts and things in preparation of maybe another rally in which some of the intel would suggest that they don't want a peaceful rally. So I'm just not going to get too much into all that aspect for that reason.
Chief, can you name another situation in Omaha Police history where you had to deploy chemicals and enforcement like this?
In my time as chief, this is the only one that I can remember. I'm sure if you go back historically in the Omaha Police Department, you may find some scenarios. This one is your most modern one, your most recent and modern history.
Can you kind of talk a little bit more about what you guys use? I know you said pepper balls and tear gas. Was there anything else administered or used last night?
We used pepper ball and tear gas. Those are crowd dispersing munitions that we use. We didn't really use too many other munitions. Okay, those were our primary mechanism to disperse the crowd. A lot of it was just interaction, trying to get those to leave through reason, trying to secure areas to try to keep the crowd contained and moving in the direction we want. And there's various things like that. But I won't ever get too involved in what our tactics are, because a couple reasons. You know, we may have to do this again tonight, okay, and we want to further the peaceful aspect and advantage that we might have. And then second, every scenario is so different. It's so different. I get questions on what would you do on this, this, and this. The problem is that question could dice itself 100 different ways.
Is there a message? Oh, sorry. Is there a message you want to get out to the protesters if there is a rally again tonight? A message you want them to know?
My message to anybody who protests, or I'll say just wants to express, maybe protest is too hard of a word sometimes. We want you to do that, and we will be there to try to facilitate the peace. We'll stay out of the way. If it's a peaceful protest, we want you to air and voice your concerns. We're there for those protesters. We're there to make it happen. Michael?
Chief, are you praying for a downpour tonight?
I'm not very superstitious, I guess. If it rains, it rains. Okay? Sure, I'll take some rain tonight.
Chief, you mentioned it in the timeline, but could you explain, the state patrol cruiser was surrounded, people were on top of it, and was that what prompted the tear gas?
Well, tear gas was deployed numerous times throughout that 6-hour window.
I guess I'm talking about the first time.
I'm not sure if tear gas was deployed at that point in time, but that's when we attempted to try to restore some order to the event. And I believe that was also when our rapid deployment force was enacted. We had them in reserve, and they were enacted at that point.
Chief, my question for you, one of our reporters last night captured video of a bunch of officers kind of pushing the crowd forward, trying to get them to move as they were throwing that gas. Is there a safer way to do that, or was that the best way to do it?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, and no offense, but I gotta like to see the video.
Sure.
Okay. It's hard for me to comment on an abstract. I have no idea what you're commenting about there.
When tear gas is deployed, does that come from the command post, or is that the individual officer's decision? Who decides when the tear gas gets deployed?
Sure. Question was who decides when the tear gas gets deployed? When you have an incident which is multi-jurisdictional and encompasses hundreds of officers, there's commanders at the command post at the ultimate level of decision making, but there's also commanders on the field and in the scene. And there isn't always time to radio back and get clearance from the captain in charge or the chief of police. So it can come in the mechanism of a coordinated plan, disseminated down from the incident command post and the commanders, or it could happen at the direction of a supervisor on the scene that feels it's urgent now to do it.
There seems to be maybe a disconnect between like a civil protest and breaking the law. Are there any more guidelines we could maybe specify to tell people like, hey, this is crossing the line and maybe this is what's allowed and not allowed?
The question was, there seems to be some disconnect between a civil protest event and then one that gets out of line. I don't know if there is mixed signals about that, to be honest with you. We've had peaceful protest in our city for long periods of times. It seemed to be a concerted effort and knowledge as to what was going on to turn this into a lawless, unsafe environment. I don't think it's an information lacking piece at all. It was a conscious decision.
Would you describe any of what happened last night as looting, Chief?
I would not. I would not.
Just the burglary at Buc-ee's was just a couple items, or?
It was more of a shoplifting that I think the person knew that they could just do that.
Chief, there were a lot of protesters and signs last night.
Can everybody hear all the questions? Because I want to make sure the audience can hear these questions, and it would help me if you say what agency you're from. I kind of got away from that because I know everybody so well after all these years. But for the public, can you say your name and then what agency you're from?
Yeah, I'm Emily Concern, our reporter with ATV. There were a lot of protesters and signs last night relating the death of George Floyd to Zachary Bearfield. Do you have a comment on that?
Certainly, both incidences, in my opinion, were very tough on law enforcement and tragic. So I understand how there's raw emotions about both. Yes.
For the businesses that were damaged during this incident, have you guys been in contact with those business owners? Do you have reaction from them?
I'm sure we've had some contact with them, but I don't know which detectives have and things like that, so I wasn't prepared to answer that question.
Todd Cooper from the World Herald. What was the damage to the cruisers? Can you give us the range? You mentioned the ice from the bumper, but were any of them totaled, were any of them flipped, or were windows just broken out?
No cruisers were flipped. There were no cruisers set on fire. There was graffiti damage, window damage, the carved ISIS in the rear, damage to the roofs and maybe the hoods from people being on it. That would pretty much capsulize the damage.
And were they occupied at the time? At any of these times?
They were. The State Patrol cruiser was occupied. I believe a few of the Omaha Police cruisers were as well. And then sometimes they were not occupied.
You mentioned injuries too, Chief. Sorry to hog this.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned injuries. Nature of the injuries. Did anybody have to be transported at all?
Nature of the injuries I'll describe as needing treatment but minor.
Actually, with 6 News, there was one civilian injury. Can you talk about that injury?
There was one civilian that we have documented. Okay, there could have been others that went to the hospital or have an injury that we're unaware of. So I want to hold out that disclaimer. I don't know the nature of that injury. It was described to me as minor in nature, and no hospitalization. They left, treated and released, if you will.
Chief, have you been in contact with any of the leaders in North Omaha, the African American community? The protesters last night were primarily young white people, and it was not in the predominantly black part of town. So, what is the attitude in North Omaha right now?
So the question was from Tom Becca from. The question was, have I been in contact with the leaders in North Omaha? And then there was a additional statement in there about the arrest made, and again there were 21 people arrested, 16 were white, 2 were Hispanic, and 3 were black. I have been in contact with many leaders from the North Omaha community. They've called me the last several days. They've called me this morning. I could describe our relationship on those phone calls as very positive. Look, Omaha, North Omaha, they've been very good to me. They've been very good to the police department. We have a strong working relationship with them, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for all those individuals that have called me. And they're very supportive of moving this forward in the best way that we can. And then we're treating it that way too. Okay, there is not really a difference of opinion here when it comes to this situation. We have to acknowledge the anger, and we do. We have to acknowledge what our uniform represents at the moment to some people. That's a fact. That's a fact of what took place in Minneapolis. I'll take maybe one more question, maybe two, if you're nice to me. Yes.
On the level of continuum of force, are they rubber bullets or are they plastic bullets?
Neither.
Oh.
It's a pepper ball.
Oh, so you guys did not use any rubber bullets?
No, we didn't use any rubber bullets. It's a pepper ball designed to hit the ground and disperse mace, and that moves the crowd. That can be deployed to target points of the body, but generally it's moved to move the crowd. It can be used directly, though, against somebody. Now, the tear gas is strictly a crowd moving mechanism. That would not be shot at any individual.
And are they? I get it. From your explanation, I can see the difference. But on the continuum of force, are they at the same part, or is that not the way to look at it?
If we're deploying a pepper ball, if we're deploying tear gas, things have escalated, and that's a use of force continuum that's fairly high for us. But it was needed to control the crowd under these circumstances. It was deployed in a safe manner so that nobody got hurt. The intent was crowd disbursement, and it did help on that front. It did. Can we end with a little more uplifting question than what that was?
I don't think it's a really uplifting question.
All
I
right.
have a couple more you can answer them.
Sure, I'll try.
One from the people who were arrested last night, are they still being held right now?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. That list we'll get to you, and that'll say what their address is, what their name is, everything. That's all public information. Okay.
Okay.
You had another question for me?
I was wondering if any of those people arrested were any assaults on officers?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Michael?
I guess you can say, I'm speaking for PETA. Horses,
Yeah.
how are they protected from the gas and the smoke? I'm watching the coverage and I'm going, who's protecting the horses?
Yeah, that's a great question, because if you were down there, you could smell the tear gas in the air, right? The horses can operate in those environments. They're trained for this type of event. They're trained in a variety of things. The riders are very skilled, so they know how to interact in that environment. So they were fine. They were fine from what I'm told. And in the horse patrol, I mean, you see them riding around, and they're very good PR for the Omaha Police Department, but they're very good for crowd control too, in the event we need them. So I'm gonna close, unless you have any questions of the mayor, but I'm gonna step aside from the podium, and I just want to end with the comment that Omaha has made tremendous strides. We have some good working relationships here. I like the momentum. And I'm not deterred or disappointed at all that we take a moment and pause and feel and experience everything that happened because of what took place in Minneapolis.
Mayor?
Yes.
Chris Baker, KFAD. Can the citizens of Omaha be sure that any lawbreaker is going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent?
Well, you know, that's up to the prosecutor to do that, depending on what violation or if they broke the law, what that incident was. So I really can't answer that question. I will tell you this, though, is, you know, when I'm hearing Chief Schmaderer talk, and I'm standing here thinking about all the work that he has done in the last 7 years since I've been mayor, and with this great team he has now assembled that are standing here in front of you today. They have made great strides in improving police-community relations. We've done everything that we feel like we could have done, from the youth to the elderly to all over the city. Those relations have improved. You don't just get trust. The police department is not handed trust. They earn it. And they have been earning it for many, many years. And we take every incident seriously. We have very few complaints for excessive force within our police department. I know I said it before, but Chief Schmatter takes every one of those very seriously. He investigates it, he disciplines, he has terminated in the past. But we hope that this incident, which was a tragic incident, and again, I don't think there's anyone in the country that doesn't think what happened in Minneapolis was wrong. I don't know of any police officer that doesn't think it was wrong. But we hope that we can stand back now, examine what happened, and move on. Because I still think, at the end of the day, that the citizens of Omaha have a lot of faith and trust in the Omaha Police Department. And my hope is that it will continue.
Do you have any message or statement on potential rallies tonight or tomorrow?
Well, I agree with Chief Schmatter. I mean, we value our constitutional rights. We value our First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, the right to peacefully assemble. But those are the rights. And that's what they were doing last night when it began. We encourage that. The police were there to offer protection if needed. When it turned and it became violent, and it did become violent, and there were issues, the police were doing what they were supposed to do, and that is to try to protect everyone that was there. And when you see the small number of people that were injured, 2 policemen, maybe 1 or 2 civilians that were there, I think it really shows they did their job. And they allowed this demonstration or protest to happen, and they kept it as peaceful as they could without injuries. That's why they were there. It's the people that are the most important. Of course, we talk about destruction of property. We talked about the businesses that were damaged. We need to do that because we want you to know. But at the end of the day, it's the people that we are most concerned about. And after this was over, very few people were hurt, very few people were injured. I asked the same questions, Michael, about the horses, and got the same answer. So it turned out okay. But consider this, we don't even know how many people were there. And at one time, I know Chief Schmatter told me that he thought there could be more than 1,000. There could be a couple thousand. To have that many people that are frustrated, angry, upset, assemble in one small area of town, and it to end like it did, I still will give a lot of praise to the Omaha Police Department.
Mayor, given the fact that this is occurring in the middle of the pandemic, and you've got 1,000 people or more in the confined area, is there any discussion with Dr. Adipour about prohibiting this type of action to begin with?
You know, I mean, that question has been asked to me, Joe, many times today. This is in the middle of a pandemic. Were they following social distancing? No. Was there more than 25 people or 10 people? Yes. Was everybody wearing a mask? No. But we had other issues that we had to deal with last night. The pandemic is one thing. Were the governor's DHMs followed last night? No, they weren't. But the concentration of what the police department was doing last night was to try to keep people safe when an incident started turning violent. And so, you know, we do our best in these situations. It's quite different than why we are restricting. People brought up to me, you know, you restricted my First Amendment rights with my right to assemble with the pandemic, but then you allow this to happen last night. Well, you know, we value your First Amendment rights, and it's different how we had to approach it with the pandemic. With the pandemic, we were trying to prevent the spread of a deadly virus, and it worked. And the one thing I tell people all the time, yes, was some of your freedoms taken away with the governor's direct health measures during the pandemic? Yes, they were, because we didn't allow you to freely assemble. But the great thing about our Constitution is you always get those rights back. And right now, everybody can see the governor is easing up on a lot of those restrictions. And knock on wood, hopefully it won't be long till we will be back to normal and all of those freedoms will be returned. Last night was one incident. You know, we hope tonight, if they assemble again, it's peaceful again tonight. But we really want to respect that people are frustrated, mad, angry, livid about what has happened. We see it all over the country. There were violent protests all over the country last night. But at the same time, I'll say this. I did hear from the mayor of Minneapolis, and of the people that were arrested in Minneapolis, the majority did not even live in Minnesota. A lot of people came in to protest. And so we want to be concerned, all of us standing in front of you today, about relationships in Omaha, and hopefully we will move forward with all the good things that have happened over the last 7 or 8 years with this police department and community relations.
Mayor,
Yes.
outside of what happened last night, in the last few weeks, we've had a lot of people ignoring restrictions, massive parties in the Ozarks, and basically all the government and health departments can say is, including our governor, well, you may want to put yourself in quarantine for 2 weeks. Is that the same advice we give to those people who were in the intersection last night at 72nd and Dodge?
You know, I mean, I think everybody knows what the directives have been all over the country for the pandemic. We know how the virus spreads. We know how contagious it is. I think everybody knows what they are recommended to do. We always stress we can only do so much. The governor can only do so much. Dr. Adi Poor, Director of Public Health, can only do so much. It's all about personal responsibility. We don't know who was there last night. Like I said, if it's the same thing that happened in Minneapolis, they might have all been from out of town. But I think they need to be responsible. And if they feel like that they put themselves out in a bad situation where they could have been exposed, then our recommendations remain the same.
Can we only hope then that we don't see any kind of spike come out of this?
Absolutely. I mean, every time you see people travel or move from one area to another, our fear is always that was somebody exposed, was somebody infected, and was somebody else exposed at that time. So this is, I mean, it's kind of two things going on at once, and last night they meshed together.
Mayor, out of the 1,000 or so people out last night, how many were peaceful versus not?
You know what? I don't know. That would be a question for Captain Lori Scott and Chief Schmatter. He was in command last night. They were down there. But like we said, when it was scheduled to start at 6, it appeared, I think, for the first 3 hours or so that it was peaceful, but more and more people came. And then I don't think it was till probably 11:15 or so. What's that? Am I correct, Chief? That is when things started turning more violent. Late. So I can't tell you how many people were peacefully demonstrating, but there were a lot of onlookers last night. A lot of people came down there just to see what was going on, which kind of complicated the things too. But some of the things I saw on TV in Omaha were very disturbing for me to see too. I mean, I saw people spit in police officers' faces and swear and cuss at them, throw rocks at them, throw bricks at them. These are not things that we want to see in our city.
Mayor, same question I have with you. Have you had any contact with the leaders in North Omaha throughout the last 24, 36 hours or so?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have, and talked to them. And you know, I think the message that I got from all of them is that we have a good relationship with the Omaha Police Department. We don't want this to affect that relationship. And this is about people. This isn't just about the property that was damaged, although that is unlawful. And when property is damaged and the people are breaking the law, the police department has to take action. But the real issue is the people that were involved. And there were very few people that were hurt. And I think the leaders in North Omaha want to see this good relationship between the entire city continue to improve. It took years to build the trust they have. It's not going to go away with one night. Any other questions? All right, thank you all very much for being here.